Hey YouTube, this is Alex for Alex's Flying Club, and welcome back to another video. This time we'll be flying an aircraft in a brand new simulator for me. I haven't played this sim yet before, even though it's been out for a while. This is IL-2 Sturmovik 1946, and we are currently in the Petlyakov Pe-2 aircraft. This is a Soviet dive bomber that served during World War II in both the Soviet Air Force and the Naval Air Service. And here is an exterior view of the aircraft.
Привет, маленький. Рады видеть вас. Спасибо за сопровождение. Конец связи.
Now, the takeoff procedure in this aircraft requires you to set the mixture to fully rich, 100%, and select your first engine, push I for ignition to start it. And then select your second engine. Push I to start that. Make sure after that you select both engines again for when you throttle up, so that you're not just increasing power to one engine. And now you just wait a little bit for the engines to heat up. You'll see me increasing my prop pitch here in preparation for takeoff. Then I'll also rev up the engines a little bit, give them a little power with my with the chocks underneath the wheels, so that I don't actually move. But I'll give it a little power so that they heat up a little faster. I don't know if this is the exact correct procedure, but this is the way that I've just been doing it so far. And I've just started recording and flying in this simulator, so I may not have all the settings down for the recording, so it's not going to be 100% smooth. You'll see, as you've already seen. So I'm sorry about that. I'll try to improve for future videos. But I'm really excited to be able to fly this aircraft and to be able to finally get a chance to try this simulator. I did try IL-2 Sturmovik maybe like 5 years ago, maybe even earlier than that. But it was a much earlier version. It definitely wasn't the 1946 version, which I received as a gift for my birthday recently from my amazing girlfriend. And yeah, it's a very cool sim. I usually play Aces High and Rise of Flight, as you may have seen from my videos, but I'm always interested in trying out all the different kinds of sims out there, especially a classic like this one. So I'm just increasing throttle very gradually because I'm not used to how this game handles takeoffs, how the planes behave themselves during takeoff. So I'm taking it nice and slowly. And the mission that we're on right now is an offline mission to do a recon. And the first time I flew this, unfortunately, I couldn't get recording because I got a Microsoft C++ error. So I'm flying the mission for the second time. And I had quite a surprise this time, because the first time I flew it, I don't know if I took off late or what, but I didn't run into any opposition. I just did my recon mission. I actually went twice over the target because I missed one of the objectives. And then I flew back to base, and nothing really happened. So that's what I expected on this second time around, that I would just fly the same mission, talk a little bit about this plane, my grandfather, and the game, and that it would be, you know, a milk run. But that's not what happened. As you'll see, I will get some company toward the end of the mission. And it will not end very pleasantly for me. Fair warning. So I'm playing this in 100% realism, and I have no icons or no flight path on the map, which you actually can't see in the playback version, but I'm definitely referencing the map to get to target. And since the landscape and textures aren't that great in this game compared to other games, it's actually kind of hard to navigate. It's an interesting challenge to figure out, where you are in the map. So I've taken off and I'm already pretty much lost. I'm trying to find my first checkpoint, which was a city called Samoziaksa. By the way, we're somewhere over Hungarian territory. So I've taken off from Kazok, and then I'm heading over to Samoziaksa, and I finally see it below me, and that's why I'm turning to heading 30. So we're going slightly east of north, and the German lines are north of us. So we're gonna skirt around the front and then head straight northwest into German territory to do a recon of a railroad. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to fly this course for quite a while, and I'm going to climb to 3,000 meters is my recon altitude. And there, the green controls there are the radiator. And when you're taking off, I forgot to mention, you do make sure that your radiator is closed so that your engine heats up faster and retains heat. By default in this aircraft, I believe it is closed, so it wasn't a big deal, but you should do a check anyway. And one of the steps that I had to do when I first got the game was I had to figure out what all the keys were, because it's slightly different from...
13-й. Это диспетчер. Подтверждаю. Вам разрешена посадка. Внимание. Истребители. Впереди.
It's slightly different from other games like Aces High, so it took me like a couple days to reprogram the keys to my liking and figure all that out. And one of the things that wasn't clear, at least to me, was that the radiator is labeled under the keys as cowl or armor flaps. The default keys are. So I don't know, maybe that's common knowledge, but I didn't know that meant radiator. Cowl armor flaps. So if you're in an aircraft like this, just press R to work your radiator. Otherwise, you'll have to map it to a throttle axis. And the two throttle axes that I have I like to use for power and for RPM.
Внимание. Истребители. Спереди, слева, выше.
So in this recon mission, by the way, over there in the distance, that's supposed to be a frozen lake, I think, or a frozen river, one of the two. In this mission, there's a group of Yak fighters which are clearing the enemy in front of me. They're on a fighter sweep in the sector that I'm going to cross into. But I've reached 3,000 meters and I've turned on the level stabilizer, which is kind of one of the autopilots in the game, I guess. I haven't quite figured out how to use all the autopilot settings. And those radio communications are the fighters engaging ahead of me.
Внимание! Истребители! Спереди, слева! Я 11-й! Он падает! 12-й! Ну ты крутой!
So, as you might have seen in the intro sequence, and as I've alluded to,
950, я буду рядом. 10-й. Меня подбивается домой. Я буду рядом.
I'll let them finish screaming over the radio. Okay. As I've alluded to, this video I've kind of dedicated to my grandfather. He was training to fly in these aircraft during World War II. He went into the service toward the end of the war, and he flew the Po-2, Il-2, and Pe-2, as they're called in Russian. The Petlyakov Pe-2 trainer, the IL-2 Sturmovik, which he was also using as a trainer, and the Pe-2 Petlyakov Peshka dive bomber, which is the aircraft that we're in right now. That's the aircraft he was training to be a crew member of. He was actually in training to be a navigator on this aircraft, but unfortunately he had an accident. He was in an accident during takeoff. One of the engines of his aircraft failed during takeoff, and his crew and aircraft crash landed, and he was in hospitals for the rest of the war. But he's kind of a very special person in my memory because when I was growing up, he would tell me stories about his time in the war, his training, and I'm sure some of them he may have embellished for the sake of his curious grandson, but it has left kind of a lifelong interest in aviation, those conversations, and I partly attribute this hobby to growing up and hearing his stories. So that's why I kind of have a special affinity for this aircraft, and I'm pretty excited to fly it. I hope to do a little bit of training on it, and then fly the 2 campaigns that came with IL-2. One campaign is the Air Force campaign for the Pe-2, and then the other one is the Navy bomber campaign. That one I'm looking forward to, especially because he was in the naval. My grandfather was in the Naval Air Service, so it's kind of cool that they have a campaign for that. And in general, this is a pretty rare aircraft to see in other flight simulators. Aces High doesn't have this aircraft, although there have been rumors that it may be a new addition. But since IL-2 is a game made by a Russian company, I believe, it was included actually as an expansion pack to IL-2, which didn't get really a lot of press, didn't really get a lot of play or videos made for it on YouTube. So that's kind of, I think it's kind of cool that I get a chance to make these videos, and hopefully I'll make more about an aircraft that's pretty rare to see on YouTube and pretty rare to hear about. So I've rounded my final checkpoint in Soviet-held territory, and now I'm heading to a course of 344 degrees toward the town of Mor, and that's where I'll begin to do my recon from Mor to Zekesfehervar. And what you see me looking at now is the enemy airfield. So now we're crossing into enemy territory. So I'll work up toward the campaigns, and I'll have to practice things like navigation, because I'll try to do the campaigns without map updates. And for that, you pretty much, what I do is I make a little sketch of the map, of the route on the map on a little notepad, and I note all the degree turns I have to make, all the new headings I have to take after each checkpoint, and I try to follow that. But even then, it's kind of hard to keep your way. But I thought it was befitting since my grandfather was a navigator on these aircraft, that I would try to do some realistic navigation. And I think in general, dive bombers are not the most popular aircraft to fly in combat flight simulators. Definitely not as popular as fighters, and even four-engine bombers. It's not a really sexy, I guess, way to fly. You know, it's not a fighter that's very maneuverable, or a bomber that flies in huge fleets at 25,000 feet over strategic targets in the heart of the enemy's homeland. Dive bombers, especially the Pe-2 for the Russians, were kind of one of the workhorses of the war. The song you heard in the beginning is from a Russian film, and the song calls these aviators the workers of the air war. So yeah, there was kind of that workman-like quality to these dive bombers. But I think dive bombing is actually pretty fun, because for me, I'm terrible at it. This will give me a chance to improve if I keep flying Pe-2 sorties, and it's kind of a challenge in its own right, because it's difficult to do well, especially under conditions where you're under attack. But it's kind of an exciting mission too, because you don't know what to expect. You're not in a fighter that can get away or has a lot of flexibility. You're not part of a huge fleet where others can protect you. You're kind of on your own in an aircraft without a lot of guns for armament, and you have to still complete your mission. And here is where I'm looking around, and all of a sudden we get jumped. I hear my navigator, the Sturman, in the back, firing away at it, and there's the 109 that's attacking us. And my fighter instincts, because I've been flying fighters so much, is to follow him as he overshoots and try to get a shot in. But I didn't realize that this aircraft is a lot more sluggish than a fighter. I couldn't pull enough lead on him, and I wasn't going to follow him up in his climb because I would just stall out. So here I've reached Mor, and I'm turning to do my recon run. Like I said earlier, I wasn't expecting this fighter to come in, so I'm kind of at a loss as to what to do. I really don't know how these dive bombers defend themselves in these situations. Do I head for the deck? Do I go on autopilot and try to fire at the fighters by myself? Here I'm just going to let my gunners actually take care of the firing. But I am going to gain a little speed and dive. But I decide to continue on my mission, and here I've reached the first secondary target, which is I pretty much just have to fly over part of the railroad. And I'm going along the length of the railroad below me, and there's two more points that I have to hit. Just fly over, essentially. I'm not dropping anything or taking photos, but I have to fly south now, and I'll try my best to complete the mission and get away, but we'll see what happens. So this fighter, this AI, he's being smart. He's not just staying on my 6 at the same speed as I'm going. Otherwise, in that case, he'd be a very easy target. He's gaining alt, and he's making diving, slashing attacks. And there'll be a second fighter that joins him, if he hasn't already. So this is definitely a new skill for me. How do I defend against fighters in this situation? Here I'm by myself, but other missions will call for me to fly in a group. And what were the tactics that these dive bombers employed? in these situations.
Внимание! Истребители! Право!
There's the airfield, and now I'm hoping that more of them don't take off to attack me. I've completed the second checkpoint, and now you see both fighters around me, and one of them has taken my wing off. And here I go. I'm frantically trying to look up on my cheat sheet what the key for ejecting is. That's why I'm still in my aircraft. So, lesson learned, one of the lessons learned is it pays to know that key beforehand. Boom! Mission is over. Well, even though there wasn't a glorious ending to the mission, I hope you still enjoyed watching it. And you can see in this video that I still have a long way to go to understand how to fly these aircraft in combat. I had to learn how to navigate, and there's the train, by the way, that I was observing. I have to learn how to take evasive maneuvers and how to actually bomb and dive bomb, which I don't know how to do. That's why I chose a recon mission. But I wanted to show you guys this, and I hope you enjoyed it, and stay tuned for more.